All right, computer took a little bit of time to actually start recording from when I hit record. Anyways, welcome everyone. This is Crota coming at you, giving you, well, my thoughts on the playtest realm patch notes for 1.3.6.2. Yada, 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 yada. So, yeah, it's 2 weeks late for an April Fool's joke, and these do seem real. And my thoughts on before I even dive into these notes, my thoughts are always going to gear towards um, what is the driving motivation and thought process behind Blizzard's patches. Right now, it seems like the vast majority of high level play is taking place on W3 champions, and that's just where you're going to find the top tier quality players. They're able to play across regions better with less lag, things like that. So if they're getting, like, I don't know the involvement. I don't know if they are talking to the high level players, but my I guess my main concern would be if they're only looking at BattleNet, which they could, and I'm not saying that they are. I don't know if they're only looking at BattleNet data, they are essentially um, changing the game at the professional level by changing the game at the collegiate level or the amateur level. And that is my concern. Hopefully, the community managers there could be a little bit more of a thought process or transparency into how these patch notes are made. Um, some of the things I agree with. Some of the things are going to shift the landscape quite a bit. But all said and done, let's go ahead and dive right on in. So, patch notes general and back end server infrastructure to improve server frame rate. I don't know why the servers need what the frame rates of a server are, but I'll take their word for it. Balance. This one was I mean, right out of the gate. If you wanted to be surprised, polymorph can now target heroes, 3 second duration, and people might be crying foul. People might be crying, "Oh my gosh, that's OP." It's like, and my I got to admit, my initial gut reaction was like, "Whoa!" Like polymorph now can stop heroes, and for me, I like for me, how would I say it? It gives like Orc had the ability to ensnare heroes, right? And you're always like, well, and that's just like one of their major plays. Being able to polymorph a hero with a 3 second duration, there's gonna that could make for some interesting plays. Being able to slow down a hero, make sure that they're not able to get a death coil or a frost nova off. I think it's gonna affect the human versus undead matchup, or people are gonna experiment with it at least. Like, hey, if I have polymorph on a sorceress and I can target the Death Knight and the Lich and the Dreadlord and polymorph them so that my casters last longer than the first 8 seconds of battle, is that going to change anything? Is there gonna be putting tension, right? Like that's what we want to see. We want to see tension. We want there to not always be a right answer that you have to go for something. Polymorph being able to target heroes, it's a tier 3, and at tier 3, if you see sorceresses out on the battlefield, now you know that slow is coming or invisibility is coming, and you have dispel, right? There's already an answer to the question of, now that polymorph can target heroes, what are you going to do? Well, you do the same exact thing that you did when your slow was cast on your hero. You dispel it, right? So there's like, okay, and it's a 3 second duration, so it's long enough to make a difference, but hopefully not long enough to like blow the game out of the water. Remember, Cyclone, right? Is able to target heroes. Okay, so Druids of the Talon have Cyclone, or Elf has Cyclone. Um, the what? Orc has Ensnare. Human now has Polymorph, and does Undead have an ability to stop channeling on a hero besides besides other hero spells? I can't think of one. But then again, if you have a hero that is standing still, channeling an ability against an undead, that hero is going to be the target of a lot of abilities. So maybe they don't feel that undead needs one. Let me know what you guys think about my analysis on that. Sundering Blades now requires an upgrade again. Okay, that was just one of those things where, like, hey, it helped. It helped that you were able to have knights, and they were immediately able to challenge those crypt fiends. It still feels like the beefy, heavy armor knights are super strong and can charge in the battle, but by the time they're already out on the battlefield, they're just giant targets for spell damage, right? Like that's what you normally see. Death Coil, Frost Nova, they have to constantly get Staff of Sanctuaried back. I would actually like to see knights getting a little bit more hit points and then drop a point of armor down, or maybe two, like drop their armor down by 2, but also increase their hit points by an appropriate amount so that they have the same effective hit points, and seeing how that stacks up, right? Whether or not they're going to be as vulnerable to spells, because remember, those are late game units, and generally by then, spells are just that much more powerful, and armor on a unit is just the base fighting. But that's another talk. I don't know if Blizzard is listening to me. If you do, well, I'm still in Irvine. You've invited me in the past. I can give thoughts. But yeah, that was a decade and another life ago. All right, moving on. Orc. Tauren are now available at Tier 2. Pulverize still requires Tier 3. Now, when I first read this, I was like, wait a second. Like, I thought Tauren already had Pulverize right out, and then you could upgrade Pulverize. So does that mean Tauren have a weak version of Pulverize at Tier 2, and then you can get the improved version of Pulverize at Tier 3? That's a thought. I like this transition for Tauren, or for Orc, because it puts tension and a decision at Tier 2 now. Before, Orc at Tier 2, you're like, okay, Grunt, let's go ahead, get that Berserker Strength, extra hit points. My Grunts are stronger. Where does Tauren now fit in? Like, Tauren didn't really fit in that role until you got to Tier 3, and you're like, well, you weren't really going to Tier 3 for Taurens anyway. Now that it's available at Tier 2, you have this question of, well, do I want to save my resources and not get the Berserker Strength upgrade? I only got that lone Grunt early on, and then I built Headhunters. Maybe I go the Tauren route. It's going to create tension, and that's what I want to see in the game. I want tension. I want decisions to be made. I don't want there to be a clear-cut answer, and yeah, that is definitely going to be interesting to see how they work out. These big, beefy, very heavy, very difficult to take out units early on. What is it going to look like? Now, Priestess of the Moon, I have always thought was, well, the very first hero that came out that had that auto ability, right? The Searing Arrows, where every time you attacked, it drained your mana a little bit, and it did bonus damage. And you're like, oh, this is kind of cool. This is kind of interesting. And then the Fire Lord came out, and then the Naga Sea Witch came out, and like other heroes came out with similar abilities, and those other abilities actually had like a little bit of debuffs, or they had more things going on, while the Priestess of the Moons was like flat, right? Now, because it only gave damage. Now the Priestess of the Moon version, like, hey, you know what? We're going to make it more efficient. We're going to improve its damage. And that's gonna be interesting to me. I want to see how this works out. It almost feels like the Owl Scout was just this is my gapper ability in between, just because the Searing Arrows doesn't really help that much. Now there's a decision there, so I like that. Mountain Giant food cost reduced from 7 to 6. Well, they're going to give a little bit less experience. You can see more of those friendly giants walking around the screen. And Vorpal Blade's research time reduced from 60 to 45 seconds. I don't know how many times I've seen glaive throwers at the professional, at the higher stage, where Vorpal Blades would make that big of a difference, right? That just seems like, okay, Vorpal Blades research time reduced. I don't remember the last time I saw Vorpal Blades being researched, but then again, I don't have the best overlay that tells me all of the researches that are done on a specific game. So maybe it has been used more than I thought. All right, reduced from 60 to 45. Undead. Ghoul Frenzy attack speed bonus reduced from 35 to 30. So, yeah, instead of a 35% increase, it's a 30% increase. Ghouls just seem to scale extremely well until you had the AoE to deal with mass ghouls. This will take take that bite out of those ghouls, or the swipes out of those ghouls a little bit, making them a little bit easier to deal with. I like it. I don't think it's a complete nerf. Like, oh my gosh, and I think we're still gonna see ghouls. I still think we're gonna see ghouls with frenzy. I think it's not gonna be as frustrating as when you're on the receiving end of ghoul with frenzy. That's what you want to remove, right? You don't want to be in that position where it's frustrating as the receiver to try and overcome this particular problem. Curse can now target mechanical units. Cripple can now target mechanical units. Interesting. So perhaps ways to deal with siege engines, right? Like siege engines, they're already very, very slow. Undead, I'm trying to deal with those units there. Hey, suddenly I'm going to hit that mechanical unit. It's going to roll even slower, and we're going to destroy it. So interesting to see casters as a way to counter some mechanical units. I'm assuming that it's going to be mainly targets of siege engines. Flying machines, not so much. Then, I mean, one supply mechanical unit, not, there's better, more efficient ways to deal with it. And obsidian statues, which is in the undead mirror match. If you're looking at glaive throwers and demolishers, well, demolishers and glaive throwers generally like outrange and are dealing siege damage to unarmored units. So not quite sure there. Undead Scroll of Healing removed from the Tomb of Relics and added Wand of Negation to the Tomb of Relics, available at Tier 2. So this changes things so that you don't need destroyers for that. That dispel magic that is so powerful and needed. Also, well, I can't imagine why an undead player wouldn't have one or two destroyers usually out on the battlefield. An easy way to, transition a useless obsidian statue that has no mana into a flying magic immune devouring magic unit. But yeah, Meat Wagon speed increased from 220 to 240. Interesting to see that Meat Wagon is the only one that gets this bonus. Like, I don't know what the movement speed is on all of the other siege units, but Undead already has Unholy Aura for movement speed for their units, so like maybe the Meat Wagon will be able to keep up with the Undead army a little bit better, but that just still seems a little strange. Frostworm Freezing Breath Lumber cost reduced from 275 to 225. Trying to make it more appetizing to get that research. Finally, moving on to the neutral Firelord Volcano, building damage factor reduced. So Volcano is not going to be able to levitate or decimate. Is it not levitate? You know what I mean. No. Completely destroy an expo, like bulldoze down an expo. Naga Sewage Tornado speed base and min speed increased from 75 to 150. So that tornado is going to be able to move at a faster rate now, going from building to building or from unit to unit, trying to pick them up and dropping them back off. Interesting. Tournaments. We are updating the tournament schedule to have more 1-on-1, 2v2, and 3v3 tournaments on Sundays and removing 4v4 from the tournament pool. All right. I haven't done any of these tournaments since the old BattleNet. I don't know. I just don't have time for like 4 or 6 hours of playing anymore. So let me know, comments below, if you play tournaments and if you see this as, yay, I really wanted to play more tournaments on Sundays. All right. Map pool updates. Removing springtime, adding tide hunters. So there's the pool. 2v2 adding synergy and Goldshire, removing Shattered Exile and Rusty Creek. All right. Removing Stranglethorn Vale, Guardians, Bloodstone Mesa, adding Wellspring, Tycoon, Scorched Basin. Removing Royal Guardians, Nightopia, Ferocity, Wellspring Temple, and adding Battleground, Full Scale Assault, Ekrazin Maze, and Emerald Gardens. All right, let me know what you guys thought about this game or not this game, these patch notes. 15 minutes. Thank you if you got to this point. And I hope to see you guys. Maybe one day I'll start playing on Battle.net again once my life starts to slow down. Hopefully, Warcraft 3 will still be around and we'll be able to enjoy some games.